A 24-year-old woman enjoying a quiet dinner date vanished from a downtown restaurant parking garage in Chicago in 2018. Police said she likely left voluntarily, maybe met someone else, maybe ran away. But there was no message, no financial activity, and no trace of her ever leaving the garage. For 5 years, the case went cold. Then, during a late-night shift change, valet workers noticed a car no one remembered parking. Inside, sealed beneath layers of dust and concrete silence, was something that redefined the word missing. The night felt ordinary in the way only safe nights ever do, soft, unremarkable, forgettable. The kind no one memorizes because there's no reason to. She checked her reflection one last time in the hallway mirror, smoothing down the sleeve of her coat. "It's just dinner," she said aloud, more to steady herself than to convince anyone else. At 24, she had mastered the balance between caution and optimism. Enough bad dates to stay alert, enough hope to still say yes. Her phone buzzed. "Friend, text me when you're home, and don't let him pick the wine, trust me." She smiled, typing back as she stepped into the cool evening air. "I will. Stop worrying." Downtown lights spilled across the street like reflections on water. Traffic hummed. People laughed on sidewalks. Nothing about the night hinted at danger. The restaurant sat on the ground floor of a mixed-use building, warm amber lights, exposed brick, the smell of garlic and wine drifting through the open door. Inside, the date was fine, polite, uneventful. They talked about work, travel plans that never materialized, the strange exhaustion of adulthood. No arguments, no red flags. Just two people passing time over shared plates and awkward pauses. At 9:47 p.m., they paid the bill. Outside, the valet stand glowed under a fluorescent lamp. A young attendant jogged off with keys while the date lingered, shoving his hands into his pockets. "You want me to walk you?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "It's okay. My car's just down there." The parking garage entrance yawned beside them, concrete swallowing sound and light. She waved once, casual, final, then turned toward the elevator alcove that led underground. That was the last confirmed moment anyone saw her alive. Security footage later showed her entering the garage alone. The timestamp blinked 9:53 p.m. She adjusted her purse strap, glanced down at her phone, and stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut with a soft, metallic sigh. She never exited. At first, no one noticed. Her family assumed she stayed out late. Friends assumed she'd crashed somewhere. By morning, her phone went straight to voicemail. By noon, worry crept in. By nightfall, fear took over. Police retraced her steps with methodical calm, confident the truth would surface quickly. They spoke to the valet, reviewed the restaurant cameras, pulled footage from the garage, and that's when the story cracked. Camera after camera showed her entering the structure from the street, from the elevator, from the stairwell angle near level B2, but not a single frame showed her leaving. No car exiting, no pedestrian at the ramps, no swipe of her keycard at the pedestrian gate. It was as if the garage had closed around her. Detectives suggested simple explanations at first. Maybe she met someone else inside. Maybe she got into a different car. Maybe she left through an unmonitored exit. But there were problems. Her purse was never used. Her bank account stayed untouched. Her phone last pinged inside the garage went dark less than 10 minutes after she entered. Days passed. Then, weeks. The garage remained open, busy, alive with engines and footsteps and echoes, cars parking over the same concrete where she'd last been seen. And somewhere beneath all that movement, beneath layers of noise and routine, the space held onto a secret no one thought to question. Not yet. Because sometimes, a person doesn't disappear into the dark. Sometimes, the dark simply closes and waits. Concrete changes sound. It stretches it, distorts it, turns footsteps into whispers and engines into distant thunder. The parking garage beneath the restaurant wasn't unusual, 5 levels underground, poured decades earlier, retrofitted in pieces over time. But at night, when traffic thinned and fluorescent lights flickered, it felt less like a structure and more like a hollowed-out space beneath the city. Police entered it just after sunrise. The air was cooler below ground, damp with oil and dust. A detective stopped near the elevator bank, staring at the security camera bolted into the ceiling. "This is where she comes down," he said. After that, nothing. They rewound the footage again. 9:53 p.m. Elevator doors open. She steps out, phone in hand. The camera catches her turning left toward level B2, where her car was parked. She disappears past a concrete pillar. That's it. No camera captures her again. Investigators mapped the garage inch by inch. Ramps spiraled downward like a concrete coil. Some areas had newer LED lighting. Others were dim, yellowed, almost cavernous. Over the years, small renovations had created odd dead zones, temporary walls left in place, storage areas blocked off, old access corridors sealed but never removed from blueprints. Could she have walked out another way? Her mother asked later, voice tight with hope. Detectives wanted that to be true. They tested it. Officers walked every pedestrian exit, every stairwell, every emergency door. Each required either a key card or triggered an alarm. None had been activated. No footage showed a woman matching her description leaving on foot. Then there was her car. She drove a compact sedan registered, insured, easily traceable. License plate readers around downtown showed nothing. No garage exit camera caught it leaving. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not ever. One detective stood at the exit ramp, watching cars roll past. If a vehicle leaves, he said, it shows up, always. Hers didn't. Her phone records deepened the unease. The last signal pinged off a tower less than 100 yards away inside the garage. 8 minutes later, it shut off completely. No battery drain, no movement. Just silence. That doesn't happen by accident, a tech analyst said quietly. Theories began to circulate. Maybe she met someone inside the garage. Someone she trusted enough to approach. Maybe she got into another vehicle willingly. Maybe there was an argument that escalated fast, unseen, unheard beneath layers of concrete, but there were no screams reported, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no witnesses. The garage attendants were interviewed next. Night shift valets, maintenance workers, security guards. Everyone remembered the evening being busy but normal. Nothing weird, one valet insisted. No fights, no shouting, just cars. Police dogs were brought in days later. They circled the elevator bank, noses low, tails stiff. One dog stopped near a row of parked vehicles on B2, whining softly. Handlers exchanged a glance, but the scent trail dissolved. It didn't lead to an exit, didn't lead up the ramp. It simply ended. As days stretched into weeks, the garage became a symbol, a place families drove to just to stand there, staring at concrete as if it might answer them back. Her father walked the levels repeatedly, counting parking spaces, touching pillars, trying to imagine where a person could go without being seen. People don't just vanish, he said to a detective. They leave something behind. But the garage offered nothing. And above it, life continued. Cars parked, engines started, tires rolled over the same painted lines, again and again. New security footage recorded thousands of ordinary moments, none of them hers. The official line hardened quietly. No evidence of foul play. Voluntary disappearance possible. Yet every expert who reviewed the case circled back to the same problem. If she chose to vanish, the garage was the worst place to do it. And if she didn't choose it at all, then whatever happened to her was still down there, waiting, hidden beneath years of noise, motion, and assumption, unnoticed by everyone who passed through it until the garage itself would one day give her back. By the third week, hope stopped sounding like hope and started sounding like a negotiation. If she just needed space, her sister told detectives, hands clenched in her lap, she would have called me, even just once. The police station conference room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and paper. On the table sat printed timelines, still photographs from security footage, maps of the garage marked with highlighter and handwritten question marks. Everything looked orderly. None of it made sense. Detectives began doing what they always do when evidence runs out, they theorized. The first theory was the gentlest, voluntary disappearance. They suggested she might have been overwhelmed, eager for a reset, assisted by someone she trusted. A quiet exit. A clean break. Her parents rejected it immediately. She loved her job, her mother said. She had plans. We talked that morning about repainting the kitchen. The second theory was more unsettling. A chance encounter. Someone inside the garage. A predator familiar with the layout. Someone who knew where cameras didn't reach. But there were problems there too. Parking garages are loud. Even late at night, sound travels, tires squeal, doors slam, voices echo, no reports of screaming, no emergency calls, no witnesses. Then came the rumors, whispers that always surface when answers don't. Someone online claimed she'd been arguing with her date. Another said she was seen getting into a dark SUV. A third insisted she'd been involved in something illegal. Each claim collapsed under scrutiny. Her date cooperated fully, providing phone records, receipts, timestamps. His alibi held. Investigators ruled him out quietly, conclusively. Still, suspicion lingered, not because of evidence, but because humans hate empty spaces in stories. Weeks turned into months. Media interest peaked, then faded. Her face appeared on flyers, taped to lampposts, then curled at the edges from rain. The garage became infamous. For a time, people slowed their cars, glanced around nervously, then moved on. Her family didn't. They visited the garage often, sometimes together, sometimes alone. Her father walked its levels like a ritual, counting steps between pillars, memorizing the smell of oil and damp concrete. "Maybe she dropped something," he muttered once, scanning the ground. Her mother stood near the elevator bank, eyes fixed on the metal doors. "This is where she was last safe," she whispered. Police followed every tip, even the bad ones. A reported sighting in another city. A woman matching her description, working at a cafe. A body found in a river miles away. Each time, the phone rang. Each time, it wasn't her. After a year, the case file thickened, but the investigation thinned. Detectives were reassigned. Leads dried up. The garage footage was archived, then reviewed again, then archived once more. Eventually, a phrase appeared in the paperwork: clinical, devastating. Case status: cold. The garage stayed open. New paint covered old scuff marks. Signage changed. A small renovation sealed off part of level B3 for storage temporary, they said. The concrete barrier went up quietly, without ceremony. Life adjusted itself around the absence. Her room at her parents' house stayed untouched for years. Her toothbrush was never thrown away. Her sister saved old voicemails, replaying them late at night just to hear her laugh. Sometimes, grief softened into numbness. Other times, it returned sharp and unexpected at birthdays, at holidays, when someone said her name without thinking. And beneath it all was the question no one could answer. How does a person disappear in a place designed to record movement? How does someone vanish where nothing ever truly sleeps? 5 years passed like this. 5 years of cars entering and exiting the same garage. 5 years of concrete absorbing vibration after vibration. 5 years of silence pressed down so hard it began to feel permanent. Until one night, during a routine shift change, a valet stopped walking. He frowned at a section of the garage he didn't recognize, and asked a question no one had thought to ask before. Has that always been there? Behind a temporary concrete wall installed, forgotten and ignored, something waited. Something untouched by time. Something that would finally force the city to remember what it had overlooked, and what it had parked over every single day. Time did what it always does when a mystery goes unresolved. It softened the edges without filling the void. By the 5th year, the garage no longer carried her name. New employees had never heard it. Old ones remembered vaguely, like recalling a story someone else once told them. To most people, it was just a place to park, levels marked B1 through B5, directional arrows faded and repainted, concrete pillars scarred by careless turns. Cars came and went in the thousands. Morning commuters, dinner guests, late-night couples laughing too loudly as they searched for their vehicles. Tires rolled over, oil stains that had been there for decades. Engines idled, doors slammed. Life echoed endlessly through the structure. No one noticed what wasn't moving. During those 5 years, the garage changed in small, forgettable ways. A lighting upgrade here. New signage there. At one point, a section of the lowest level B3 was partially closed during a minor renovation. Contractors installed a temporary concrete barrier to block off unused space behind an old storage corridor. The barrier stayed longer than planned. Paperwork was misplaced. Ownership of the building shifted. What had once been labeled temporary quietly became permanent by neglect. The blocked-off area slipped off maps, then off memory. Valet staff rotated constantly. College students, night shift workers, people who learned the garage by habit, not blueprint. You parked where you were told. You avoided sections that looked closed. You didn't question walls. Why would you? Above ground, her family lived in a different kind of suspended time. Her sister stopped expecting phone calls, but never deleted the contact. Her parents learned to carry grief quietly, the way people do when it's been too long for public sympathy, but not long enough for peace. Every anniversary of her disappearance passed with the same ritual candles, a photo, unanswered questions. "I still don't believe she left," her mother said once, years later. "I believe she was taken from where she felt safe." The garage inspections were routine. Fire safety checks, structural reviews. Nothing invasive. No one looked behind walls unless there was a reason. And there was no reason. Until the city approved a larger renovation project, one that required clearing unused storage areas to reinforce load-bearing columns. A contractor flagged the old barrier on B3 as non-compliant. It was scheduled for removal. The night before work was set to begin, valets were asked to do a full inventory sweep, something they did occasionally, counting vehicles left overnight to avoid billing disputes. 2 workers walked level B3 just after midnight, footsteps echoing sharply in the near-empty space. The lighting was dimmer down there, older fixtures buzzing faintly. One of them slowed. "Hey," he said, pointing. "Do you remember parking anything back there?" His coworker frowned. "Back where?" Behind the concrete barrier, through a narrow maintenance gap, something dark and curved caught the light just a sliver. Not a wall, not a pipe. Metal. They edged closer. Dust lay thick on the ground, undisturbed, like it hadn't been touched in years. Through the gap, the outline became clearer. A car. Not abandoned in the open, not wrecked, just parked. "That's not on the list," the first valet said quietly. They checked their inventory again. Every vehicle accounted for, except one. Security was called. Flashlights swept through the gap, beams cutting through stale air. The car was coated in dust so thick it dulled its color completely. Cobwebs clung to the wheel wells. The tires were flat, sagging into the concrete. It hadn't moved in a very long time. And suddenly, 5 years of noise, motion, and assumption collapsed into a single impossible question. How does a car sit untouched in an active parking garage for half a decade without anyone noticing? The answer waited just beyond the barrier, sealed in darkness, patient, and about to be uncovered. The concrete barrier came down with a sound that echoed through the garage like a held breath finally released. Chunks crumbled away under the contractor's sledgehammer, dust blooming into the air in pale clouds. Flashlights cut through it, beams jittering as hands shook not from fear exactly, but from the growing sense that something was very wrong. When the opening was wide enough, security stepped through first. The space behind the wall was smaller than expected, a forgotten pocket of the garage no larger than a few parking bays. The air was stale, unmoving, carrying the dry smell of dust and old oil. No tire tracks marked the floor. No footprints crossed the concrete. The car sat perfectly still. Its color was impossible to tell beneath years of grime. Dust lay so thick it muted every curve, turning chrome dull, swallowing reflections. Cobwebs stretched from side mirror to pillar, unbroken. The windshield was opaque with filth, like frosted glass. One security officer circled it slowly. "This thing hasn't moved in years," he said. The license plate was unreadable at first, coated, bent slightly, half hidden by dust. Someone wiped it with a gloved hand. The numbers emerged. The garage went quiet. Those plates were still active. Police were called immediately. By the time detectives arrived, the area was taped off, the garage partially shut down. Commuters were turned away with vague explanations about maintenance issues. No one wanted rumors spreading before facts were confirmed. A tow was considered, then dismissed. This wasn't a simple abandoned vehicle. A flashlight beam slid across the interior through the driver's side window. The glass was intact. The doors were locked. Inside, the car looked like time had stopped mid-breath. A jacket lay folded on the passenger seat, the same color her mother remembered. A half-empty water bottle sat in the cup holder, plastic clouded with age. Receipts rested in the center console, edges yellowed but legible. The date matched the night she vanished. A detective leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass. "There's a phone," he said. It lay on the floorboard, screen dark, exactly where it might have fallen if someone dropped it while reaching for something else. The trunk was opened next. It was empty. No luggage, no tools, no signs of cleanup or transport, just a spare tire and dust layers of it, undisturbed. The VIN was checked on site. The confirmation came back quietly, devastating in its simplicity. The car belonged to her. For 5 years, it had been sitting less than 200 feet from where she was last seen. 5 years of valets parking cars around it. 5 years of inspections that never looked behind that wall. 5 years of people driving in and out, unaware they were passing a sealed-off tomb of unanswered questions. There was no sign of forced entry, no shattered glass, no blood, which made it worse. Investigators reconstructed the scenario slowly. She enters the garage, reaches her level, finds her car. Something happens, something that keeps her from driving away, something that doesn't trigger alarms or attract attention. Did the car stall? Did she feel unsafe and step out? Did someone approach her in that dead zone where cameras didn't reach? And then, most haunting of all, how did the car end up sealed, behind a wall? No one remembered building around it. Construction records were pulled. The barrier had been installed months after her disappearance, during a minor renovation meant to block off unused space. No one documented what was already inside. No one checked. When detectives called her family, there was a long pause on the line. They had waited years for news. They never expected it to be this close. Her mother arrived at the garage before dawn the next morning. She stood behind the tape, staring at the dust-covered vehicle, one hand pressed to her mouth. "That's her car," she whispered. "That's where she was trying to go." The discovery answered one question and ignited a dozen more. If her car never left the garage, then neither did she. And whatever happened to her didn't happen far away, in some unknown place. It happened right here, in the dark, behind a wall everyone forgot to question. The garage felt different once the car was found. Not colder, not darker, just heavier, like the concrete itself had finally admitted what it had been carrying. Investigators moved carefully now, voices lowered, footsteps deliberate, as if the space deserved respect it hadn't been given before. Forensics worked the scene, inch by inch. They vacuumed dust for fibers, lifted fingerprints, where skin might once have touched metal, opened doors that hadn't been opened in 5 years. The smell inside the car was dry and stale, not of decay, but of abandonment, objects left behind without their owner. There were no signs of a struggle inside the vehicle. No blood, no torn fabric, no broken nails embedded in upholstery, which forced investigators to confront the most disturbing possibility. Whatever happened to her occurred outside the car, or happened so quickly she never had a chance to react. Experts reconstructed the likely sequence. She enters the garage, walks to her car, unlocks it. At some point before driving away, she exits the vehicle, possibly startled, possibly interrupted. The phone drops to the floor. That aligns with the final signal going dark minutes later. Then, nothing recorded. One detective stood near the spot where the car had been parked, staring at the surrounding pillars. "This area was a blind zone," he said. "No cameras, no direct line of sight from the ramps. A perfect pocket of invisibility." Search teams scoured the garage again, this time with urgency bordering on desperation. Every sealed corridor, every utility room, every drain and crawl space. Cadaver dogs alerted faintly in several locations, but nothing definitive surfaced. No remains were found. That absence fractured the family in a new way. Finding the car had ended one nightmare and begun another. Proof she hadn't left. Proof she'd been here all along. But without her body, the truth stayed just out of reach, close enough to ache, too far to touch. Her sister broke down during a press conference. She didn't disappear, she said. She was missed. Overlooked. Forgotten behind a wall. The city launched an internal investigation. How many inspections had failed? How many people had signed off without checking? How many times had that wall been passed without question? No single person was blamed. And that, somehow, felt worse. Experts offered theories, some cautious, some grim. An opportunistic attacker familiar with the garage. An accidental death followed by panic and concealment. A medical emergency in the wrong place at the wrong time. None could be proven. What remained undeniable was this. For 5 years, her car had been parked in an active garage beneath a major city building, sealed off not by intent but by neglect. A disappearance preserved by routine. The family held a memorial not far from the garage entrance. Candles flickered against concrete walls. Her photo sat beside the elevator doors she'd stepped through on her last night. "This is where she vanished," her father said quietly. "And this is where we found her again, at least part of her." The garage reopened weeks later. Cars returned. Engines echoed. Life resumed its relentless rhythm. But some spaces never recover their innocence. People who park there now say they feel it, the weight of knowing what was missed, what was parked around, what sat hidden in plain sight. Valets pause longer on level B3. Drivers glance twice at walls that look too new, too solid, too final. Because the truth this garage revealed is a simple, terrifying one. Sometimes mysteries aren't buried in distant forests or unknown roads. Sometimes they're sealed behind concrete. And the most frightening thing isn't that someone vanished.